December 8, 1963, 9:23 p.m. Frank Sinatra is alone in his compound in Palm Springs when the phone rings. He's been drinking. Jack Daniels. Straight. The kind of drinking a man does when he's trying to forget something. The phone keeps ringing. Finally, on the seventh ring, Frank picks up. Yeah. The voice on the other end is calm. Too calm. Professional. Mr. Sinatra, we have your son. Frank's entire body goes rigid. The glass in his hand freezes halfway to his lips. What? We have Frank Jr. He's alive, for now. If you want him to stay that way, you'll listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Frank's mind is racing. This is a prank. Has to be. Frank Jr. is performing at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe. He's on stage right now. This is impossible. I want to talk to him. I want to hear my son's voice. You'll hear his voice when we're ready. Right now, you listen. We want $240,000, small bills, used. You have until Wednesday night. We'll call with instructions. If you contact the police, if you tell anyone, your son dies. Do you understand? Frank's voice is barely a whisper. Yes. Good. Don't do anything stupid, Mr. Sinatra. Your son's life depends on it. Click. The line goes dead. Frank stands there, his hand shaking so badly he can barely keep his grip on the phone. Then the phone rings again. Frank answers before the first ring finishes. Hello? A different voice. Frantic. Mr. Sinatra, this is Bill Faggett, Frank Jr.'s trumpet player. I'm calling from Harrah's. Someone came into the dressing room. They had a gun. They took Frank. And that's when Frank Sinatra feels his legs give out. He drops into a chair. His son is gone, taken at gunpoint by strangers who want money. And Frank has 68 hours to get him back alive. What Frank did in the next 15 minutes would either save his son or guarantee his death. And the secret the FBI would discover about the kidnappers would make this even more terrifying than anyone knew. December 8, 1963. Harrah's Club, Lodge, Lake Tahoe. 9:10 p.m. Frank Sinatra Jr. is in his dressing room between sets. He's 19 years old, tall, good-looking, the shadow of his father in every feature. Growing up as Frank Sinatra's son was impossible. Every teacher compared him to his father. Every audition, they expected the voice. Every performance, they waited for magic. And when Frank Jr. was just good, not great, just good, they were disappointed. His trumpet player, John Foss, is with him. They're going over the set list for the second show. There's a knock at the door. Yeah? Frank Jr. calls out. The door opens. Two men walk in, both in their 20s. They look normal. Could be hotel staff. Could be fans. Frank Sinatra Jr.? One asks. Yeah? That's when Frank Jr. sees it. The gun, a .38 revolver, pointed directly at his chest. Don't move. Don't scream. Don't do anything stupid. Frank Jr.'s heart stops. His mouth goes dry. The man with the gun steps forward. You're coming with us. Right now. What do you want? Your father's money. Now move. They bind his hands with rope, put a blindfold over his eyes, walk him out the back entrance, into the parking lot, into a car. Get in the trunk. Frank Jr. hesitates. Getting in that trunk means disappearing, means nobody knows where he is. I said get in. Frank Jr. climbs into the trunk. The lid slams shut. Darkness, complete darkness. He's lying on his side, hands bound, breathing through his nose. He has no idea where they're taking him. No idea if he'll ever see his family again. And Frank Sinatra Jr. realizes his name is the only reason he's still alive, and it might also be the reason he dies. 9:47 p.m. Frank Sinatra's compound, Palm Springs. Frank is on the phone with the FBI. He called J. Edgar Hoover directly. Within minutes, agents are being dispatched. "Don't pay anything until we set up surveillance," the FBI tells him. "We'll get your son back." Frank wants to believe them, but he knows the truth. The FBI wants to catch kidnappers. He wants his son alive. Those two goals don't always align. Nancy Sr. arrives from Los Angeles at dawn. Despite their divorce 12 years ago, she came immediately. Because this is her son, too. She sits across from Frank in the living room. They don't talk. They just wait. Together. What nobody knows yet is who took him. Barry Keenan, 23 years old, from a wealthy family. Used to be a successful stockbroker. Lost everything in bad investments. Now he's broke and convinced himself that kidnapping Frank Sinatra's son is a business opportunity, not a crime. A transaction. Joe Amsler, Keenan's childhood friend, a former athlete who never made it, went along because Keenan promised him $50,000. John Irwin, 42, recently released from prison for armed robbery. The muscle. These aren't professionals, they're amateurs. And that makes them exponentially more dangerous. Monday, December 9th, 11:42 a.m. Frank hasn't slept. He's been sitting by the phone for 14 hours, chain smoking, drinking coffee. The phone rings. Frank grabs it. "Yeah." "Mr. Sinatra, do you have the money?" "I'm working on it. You have until tomorrow night, $240,000. Be ready." "Let me talk to him." Silence. Then, muffled, scared. "Dad?" Frank's eyes close. Relief floods through him. "Frankie, are you okay?" "I'm okay. Dad, just do what they—" The line cuts off. The kidnapper is back. Wednesday, 9 p.m. Stay by the phone. Click. Nancy Sr. is crying quietly. Frank looks at her. For the first time in years, really looks at her. "We're going to get him back," Frank says. "I promise you, Nancy." Tuesday, December 10th, 3:17 p.m., 31 hours since the kidnapping. Frank has the money, $240,000 in 2 suitcases. He liquidated everything, cleaned out bank accounts, called in debts. The phone rings. "I have the money." "Good. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m., LAX airport parking lot. A man will approach you. He'll say, 'I'm from Frank.' Give him the suitcases. He'll tell you where your son is." "How do I know you'll let him go?" "You don't, but you don't have a choice, do you?" Click. The FBI wants to use the drop to catch them, set up surveillance. But Frank doesn't care about catching them. He cares about Frank Jr. "What if something goes wrong?" Frank asks. "What if they kill him?" "Mr. Sinatra, we do this every day." "This isn't every day. This is my son." Frank's voice explodes. Nancy Sr. puts her hand on Frank's arm. "Frank, listen to them." Frank looks at the suitcases full of money. He's commanded stages, faced down mobsters. But right now, he's just a father, powerless, terrified. "Okay," Frank says quietly. "Wednesday, 9 p.m. But what Frank didn't know was that 450 miles away, Frank Jr. was making a decision that would either save his life or get him killed. And the kidnappers were arguing about something that would change everything. December 9th, or 11th, Brentwood, Los Angeles. Frank Jr. is being held in a rented house. They keep him in a bedroom closet, hands bound, blindfold on. They move him periodically. Can't let him get comfortable. He's listening to the kidnappers argue in the next room. What if the FBI is involved? Joe Amsler is getting nervous. He won't call them, Keenan insists. He wants his son back. John Irwin, cleaning his gun, laughs. "You think Frank Sinatra is just going to hand over $240,000 and forget this happened? You're an idiot." Frank Jr. is listening to every word. He's terrified, but he's also thinking, trying to survive. The kidnappers are amateurs, that's obvious. They're disorganized, arguing, making mistakes. The blindfold isn't tight enough. Frank Jr. can see light underneath it. He's counting steps, memorizing sounds, building a map in his mind, just in case. The hours blur together for Frank Jr. They feed him once a day, crackers, water, sometimes a sandwich. They let him use the bathroom, but one of them always watches. The humiliation is almost worse than the fear. At night, in the closet, Frank Jr. thinks about his father, wonders if he's worried, wonders if he's angry, wonders if he blames Frank Jr. for getting kidnapped in the first place, because that's what Frank Jr. does. He blames himself. He should have been more careful, should have had security, should have listened when people warned him that being Frank Sinatra's son made him a target. But he'd wanted to prove he could make it on his own. Without bodyguards, without his father's protection, without the Sinatra machine. Now look where that got him, tied up in a closet, waiting to die. Wednesday, December 11th, 6:42 a.m. 57 hours since the kidnapping. Frank Sr. hasn't slept in 3 days. He looks 10 years older, gray, haggard. His hands shake when he lights cigarettes. Nancy Sr. has been making coffee, keeping the family calm, being strong because Frank can't be. The FBI has set up a command center in Frank's living room. Phones, recording equipment, agents rotating in shifts. Frank paces, back and forth, wearing a path in his own carpet. Tina and Nancy Jr. are there too. They arrived yesterday, both crying, both terrified for their brother. Frank hugs them, tries to be strong, but they can see it in his eyes, the fear, the helplessness. This is Frank Sinatra's worst nightmare, not losing his voice, not losing his career, losing his child. Wednesday, December 11th, 8:47 p.m. Frank is in his car driving toward LAX. The 2 suitcases are in the passenger seat. $240,000. His son's life. FBI agents are following at a distance. Unmarked cars, watching. 9:00 p.m. He pulls into the airport parking lot. Waits. 9:07 p.m. A man approaches, mid-20s, nervous. He taps on the window. Frank rolls it down. "I'm from Frank," the man says. Frank's hand moves toward the suitcases, but he stops. "Where's my son?" "He's safe. Give me the money, and I'll tell you." "No, you tell me where he is first." They stare at each other. The man is sweating. Finally, he breaks. "Imperial Highway and Sepulveda, gas station, 2 hours. Now give me the money." Frank hands him the suitcases. The man disappears. An FBI car follows. Frank sits there for a moment. The suitcases are gone. His son is supposedly safe. But what if they're lying? What if this was a trick? What if Frank Jr. is already... No, he can't think like that. Won't think like that. Frank starts the car and drives to Imperial Highway and Sepulveda. He's not waiting 2 hours. He's going now. 11:23 p.m., Rosecrans Boulevard, Los Angeles. Frank Jr. is stumbling down the street, still blindfolded, hands unbound. They'd pushed him out of the car 10 minutes ago, told him to count to 1,000. He counted to 500, then ripped off the blindfold. He flags down a passing car. An elderly couple. "Please, I need help. I'm Frank Sinatra Jr. I've been kidnapped." They take him to a gas station, let him use the phone. Frank Jr. dials his father's compound. His hands shake so badly he misdials twice. "Hello?" Nancy Sr.'s voice. Mom, it's me." Nancy screams, "Frank, he's alive." Then Frank Sr.'s voice. "Frankie, where are you?" "I don't know. Somewhere in L.A. A gas station. They let me go." "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm okay." Frank Sr.'s voice cracks. Stay there. I'm coming. I love you, Frankie." "I love you too, Dad." 90 minutes later, Frank Sr. pulls up to the gas station. He sees Frank Jr. standing under the fluorescent lights, rumpled, exhausted, but alive. Frank gets out of the car, walks toward his son. And then, for the first time in years, Frank Sinatra embraces his son and cries. Not the controlled tears of a performer, not the strategic emotion of an actor, real tears, a father's tears, relief and terror and love and guilt, all mixed together. "I thought I lost you," Frank whispers. "I thought I lost you. I'm okay, Dad, I'm okay." But neither of them is okay, and neither of them will ever be okay again. December 13th, 1963. All 3 kidnappers are arrested within 12 hours. The FBI traced them from the money drop, found fingerprints, tracked the car. It's over. Except it's not. Frank Jr. was safe. But what the FBI discovered next would reveal something that made Frank Sinatra lose control completely. And the secret Frank kept for 34 years would explain why their relationship never recovered. The trial becomes a media circus. Every newspaper in America covers it. Photographers camp outside the courthouse. Reporters shout questions at Frank every day. The defense strategy is despicable. They claim it was all a hoax, that Frank Jr. staged his own kidnapping for publicity, that the Sinatras orchestrated the whole thing to boost Frank Jr.'s failing career. Barry Keenan takes the stand and testifies that Frank Jr. was in on it, that they'd planned it together, that it was all fake. Frank Sr. is there every day, front row, sunglasses on, even inside. His face is stone. His presence is a message. I'm watching you. But inside, Frank is boiling. Every lie, every accusation, every smirk from Keenan on the witness stand. Frank Jr. testifies, describes the kidnapping, the closet, the fear, the gun, the trunk, the 68 hours of not knowing if he'd live or die. When the defense attorney asks if he was physically harmed, Frank Jr. says no. "So they didn't hurt you at all?" "They didn't need to. The gun was enough." "But you cooperated with them." "I wanted to survive." "Did you at any point think this might be good publicity for your career?" Frank Jr.'s face goes white. "Are you serious? Just answer the question." "No, I thought I was going to die." Frank Sr. nearly explodes. Agents have to restrain him from lunging at the defense table. Dean Martin, sitting next to him, grabs his arm. "Pally, don't. Don't give them what they want." The jury doesn't buy the defense's story. All 3 kidnappers, guilty. Barry Keenan, life in prison, later reduced to parole after serving 4.5 years. Joe Amsler, life in prison, later reduced. John Irwin, 75 years, later reduced. Frank Sr. shows no emotion when the verdict is read, just stands up, walks out. Outside the courthouse, reporters surround him. "Mr. Sinatra, how do you feel about the verdict?" Frank removes his sunglasses, looks directly at the cameras. "I hope they rot in hell." Then he gets in his car and drives away. The kidnapping didn't just traumatize Frank Jr., it destroyed his relationship with his father. Not immediately, not obviously, but slowly, over years, like poison seeping into groundwater. Frank Sr. became obsessed with protection, hired bodyguards for Frank Jr., insisted on knowing where he was at all times, made him check in daily. Frank Jr. felt suffocated. "I don't need bodyguards, Dad." "Yes, you do." "I'm an adult. I can take care of myself." "You said that before. Look what happened." The words hung in the air like poison. Frank Sr. didn't mean it that way, didn't mean to blame Frank Jr., but that's how it landed. And Frank Jr. heard the subtext. This was your fault. You weren't careful enough. You were weak. Over the next decade, Frank Jr. pulled away, stopped calling, stopped asking his father for help, changed his performing name, refused to trade on the Sinatra name. He took gigs his father would have discouraged, small clubs, low pay. But they were his gigs, his career, not handed to him, earned. Frank Sr. didn't understand. Why are you making this so hard on yourself? I can make one phone call, get you on television, get you real money. I don't want your phone calls, Dad. Why not? Because then it's not mine. It's yours. It's always yours. They stopped talking for months at a time, then years. The distance grew. Frank Sr. thought he was helping, protecting, being a good father. But what he was really doing was suffocating his son with his own fear and guilt. After the kidnapping, Frank Sr. changed completely. He installed sophisticated security systems at his Palm Springs compound. Guards, cameras, motion sensors, alarms. Started carrying a gun. Varied his schedule constantly. Changed phone numbers every few months. Screened all visitors. His friends noticed. Dean Martin joked, "What are you so worried about, Pally? You got more security than Fort Knox." But Frank wasn't joking. You don't know what it's like, Dean. You don't know what it's like to get that call, to sit there for 3 days not knowing if your kid is alive or dead. Dean stopped joking. Sammy Davis Jr. tried to talk to him about it. "Frank, you can't live like this, always looking over your shoulder, always waiting for something bad to happen. Watch me," Frank said. And he did, for the rest of his life, always vigilant, always suspicious, always waiting for the next disaster. Tina Sinatra later wrote in her memoir, "The kidnapping poisoned my father. He never trusted anyone again, not completely. He always thought something terrible was about to happen. And he spent the rest of his life trying to control everything so it wouldn't." In 1997, 1 year before Frank died, he told Tina something he'd never told anyone. They were sitting in his Palm Springs compound. Frank was frail by then. 81 years old. His memory was failing. His health was deteriorating. But that day, his mind was clear. "Tina, there's something I need to tell you. About Frankie. About the kidnapping." Tina sat down. "What is it, Dad?" 3 weeks before it happened, I got a letter. Anonymous, no return address, mailed from Los Angeles. "What did it say?" "It said, 'Your son is vulnerable. He's performing in small venues with no security. Someone could take him. You should protect him.'" Tina's eyes went wide. "You got a warning?" I threw the letter away, thought it was a crank, some crazy person trying to scare me. "Dad, I never told Frank Jr., never hired security for him, never warned him, never did anything." Frank's voice was shaking now, tears running down his face. And then, 3 weeks later, the phone rang. "We have your son." "Dad, you couldn't have known it was real." "I should have known. That's my job, to protect my kids, and I failed. I threw that letter away, and I failed him." Tina held his hand. "Did you ever tell Frank Jr. about the letter?" Frank shook his head. "How could I? How could I tell him I had a warning and ignored it? That I could have prevented the whole thing? He would understand, Dad. He would forgive you." "No, he wouldn't, because I can't forgive myself." For 34 years, Frank carried that guilt, that secret, that terrible knowledge. And it explained everything: the overprotection, the paranoia, the strained relationship, the distance that never healed. Frank wasn't just protecting Frank Jr. from the world. He was trying to atone for failing him once. But he never told Frank Jr. the truth, never admitted the letter existed, never asked for forgiveness, and Frank Jr. never understood why his father suffocated him, Why the bodyguards? Why the constant check-ins? Why his father looked at him sometimes with such profound sadness? Two men, father and son, both carrying trauma from the same 68 hours, both unable to talk about it, both damaged in ways that never healed. December 8, 1963, started as an ordinary night. By 9:23 p.m., everything changed. 68 hours. That's all it took to shatter a family. Frank Sinatra sang about doing it his way, about being in control, about answering to no one. But for 68 hours, Frank had no control, no power. He could only wait, and hope, and promise anything if they'd just bring his son home. They did bring him home. Frank Jr. survived. The kidnappers went to prison. But the damage was done. Frank Sr. became a man who saw threats everywhere, who trusted no one, who built walls around his family that nobody could penetrate. Frank Jr. became a man who could never escape his name, who spent his life trying to prove he wasn't just Frank Sinatra's son, who carried the weight of those 68 hours until the day he died. He performed for decades, became a band leader, a conductor. Eventually, in the 1980s and 90s, he even conducted his father's orchestra during Frank Sr.'s final tours. They stood on the same stage, father and son, but the distance between them was as vast as it had been in 1963. After performances, Frank Jr. would go to his hotel room alone, and Frank Sr. would go to his suite, surrounded by people, but still alone. Frank Jr. died in 2016. Heart attack, 72 years old, on tour, performing until the end. Even in death, he was remembered as Frank Sinatra's son, not as Frank Sinatra Jr., accomplished musician, not as a band leader or conductor, as a son. The identity he spent his entire life trying to escape was the only one that mattered to the world. When Frank Sr. died in 1998, he was calling for Nancy, the woman who was there when it happened, the woman who held him while he waited for that phone call, the woman who sat with him through those 68 hours, the woman who knew the secret he carried. The kidnapping lasted 68 hours. The consequences lasted 53 years, until the day Frank Sinatra died, still carrying the guilt, still unable to forgive himself for the letter he threw away, for the warning he ignored, for the protection he didn't provide. Some bonds don't break, even when everything else does. That's the truth about Frank Sinatra, the man behind the music, the father behind the chairman of the board. He wasn't invincible. He wasn't fearless. He wasn't untouchable. He was just a father who failed to protect his son and spent the rest of his life trying to make up for 68 hours he couldn't control. That's the Frank Sinatra nobody sings about. But it's the one that matters most. Because in the end, we're not remembered for how many records we sold, or how many stages we commanded, or how many people knew our name. We're remembered for how we loved, and how we failed, and whether we had the courage to admit it. Frank Sinatra never had that courage, and it cost him everything that mattered.